I hopefully will not have anybody else ask me over the next week if I'm ready for Christmas. I'm not, and I never am. Even have less responsibilities toward Christmas than I ever have, probably going back to when I was in my 20s. Still not ready for Christmas, but got some good news from a family member today in regards to my preparation for Christmas. So that was very nice of them to help me along. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We appreciate all of you being here, and it's quite a day here on December 19th. We are 6 days away from Christmas. Many of you do not celebrate. So regardless of whether you don't celebrate anything or you celebrate Hanukkah, happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate this joyous holiday. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We had Uncle Lou on for an hour at 5 Eastern. If you could not join us, please check that out. Great stuff from Uncle Lou. Also, we'll be on tonight at 11 Eastern Time, 8 Pacific on the USC channel, of course, with our USC live show with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire. Matt does a phenomenal job covering college football and USC in particular. And sometimes I have to remind myself that he's covering all these other sports at the same time. He has a sports mind like few I've come across in my lifetime. I made the statement to a buddy via text. Got a few different text chains, like I'm sure all of you do, with various friends, like these 3 friends over here and these 5 friends over here and these individual text chains, of course. And it hit me at about 3 or 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon that there were NFL games on. And that happens about every week now, where we are 2 to 3 hours into an NFL Sunday before I actually remember, oh, there are football games on today, NFL games. I missed all 3 of what were mostly 2 out of the 3 amazing NFL games on Saturday. Did not see any of them. I kind of caught up with what happened in Minneapolis with the Vikings coming back, making a historic comeback, the greatest comeback in the history of the NFL over the Colts, down 33-0. And then the Dolphins-Bills game later that night was rather exciting. From what I understand, I didn't see any of it. But made a comment to one of my buddies. I just said, I sometimes feel like a different person or something, because for a guy who 20 years ago had every other person in my life telling me that I knew more about the NFL than anybody on the planet, to now not even knowing that who's playing. And then I quizzed myself after that struck me as, I know less about the NFL than I ever have since I've been 10 years old. That I would say from the time I was 10 years old up until about 5 years ago, there was never a point in time that I did not know every NFL head coach, bare minimum. And I usually knew their record and where they had coached before, and complete bios. I went through and I only knew 19 of 32 NFL coaches. Only 19 of 32. Which is about what I would have guessed. And I'm sure if I heard the names of the other coaches, I would know them. But I could only name 19 of 32. Anyway, on to college football, and we had Marshall and UConn line up today. I did not see one play of that game. I had other things to deal with this afternoon and could not catch up with that game, but I DVR'd it. I DVR all the bowl games. I want to catch up to all the bowl games. Although on Saturday, this was unfortunate. On Saturday, I had to be out of the house early in the day, so I DVR'd Cincinnati-Louisville. And I watched that game and kind of caught up to it. And of course, that Washington State, Fresno State game, the LA Bowl was about to come on, and also the Florida-Oregon State game, the Vegas Bowl, yes, that was about to come on. And I started watching those games, and 5 o'clock hit and lost power. So I thought, okay, lost power, wasn't supposed to come back for 2 or 3 hours. So I left, found something to do, left, went to go eat, did some other things, and was out and about for several hours. And actually, I came home and it was still pitch black. So I just went to bed. I thought, can't do anything. So I went to bed. So I kind of missed all the bowl action from Saturday to a certain extent. I watched like the first half of the Vegas Bowl, and that was pretty much over at that point. Those two particular games were not good games. And then even DVRing all those games didn't help me because they didn't DVR because the power was out. So anyway, I got home and I had a very strange night because I went to bed early, but then I woke up and then the power came back on and then I was up all night. I was catching up with everything. All right. And then we had this, Marshall in Connecticut today. So I didn't watch a play of that, but I taped it. And I'll tape the Monday night game tonight and we'll watch some football a little bit later. See, the Packers are playing at home against somebody, and it's rather frigid as it gets to be at this point of the year. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. And before we take our first call, coming in from Patrick here, I would like to say that I posted a video. I believe this was on Sunday morning. I posted a video. So I was upset about somebody calling me names on social media. I don't mind anybody calling me names. They were calling me particular names, accusing me of certain things. So, and that happens to people that kind of put themselves out there, and that unfortunately probably happens to all of you too at some point. So I just had to call out kind of like not that particular person because it happens frequently. I think to all of us. Again, I'm not saying like it only happens to me, but when you put yourself out there as having a brand, having your face out there all the time, then you become more of a target. And that's fine. That comes with the deal. And I don't have an issue with that. It's just the possible and potential reputation damage that comes with that. That is what pisses me off. And that's what got me enraged, being unjustly accused. I don't care if anybody says, I know nothing about football or I'm a clown or whatever. I have no issue with that, or I'm ugly, or, I dye my hair or something like that, which I don't. But anyway, been accused of that. That's one that comes up that's funny. So none of that bothers me. But when you put it in certain categories, then it becomes very bothersome because people are impressionable out there. So I went on a bit of a rant, but I want to thank all of you because there was this outpouring of people that just wanted to support and say, Mark, don't listen to the haters. And I want you to know, don't be overly concerned about a rant like that because I'm not overly concerned with the haters. I just think social media is just a horrible thing. It really is. It could be a great thing. And in pockets, it is great. It's great that people can connect. It is phenomenal that there are charities and other goodwill that's put out there on social media. So there's a lot of great things about social media. Unfortunately, about 90% of it's not. So you get like 10% good, and then you get like 40% that's neither good or bad. It's just frivolous, dumb stuff, and that's fine. Make us laugh. That's a good thing. Laughter is a good medicine. It's a great thing in life. And then about 50% of it's horrible, is like really bad. So anything can be used for good or it could be used for bad. So that was my basic statement there. But I appreciate everybody coming out, everybody that made comments. There were all sorts of comments there that were very supportive, and I appreciate them. And I won't be able to get back to all of them, but I just wanted to say for whomever responded to that particular video, thank you so much for that. And again, we've got some other great content coming out. I've got a video that I've posted the audio to. I've got to put the graphics together. I'm doing a TCU. Look at all those numbers. Look at all those stats. Man, crazy. I went to town on TCU in Michigan. I'm doing the same thing with Ohio State and Georgia, and going to give some context to these numbers and match those teams up. So welcome to the Voice of College Football. Let's take our first caller. That would be Mr. Patrick's on the line. Patrick, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. How are you? Are you with me?
Sorry, I think I just got your volume up now. Okay.
How
are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you taking my call here. So first I'd say I love your work, and in regards to the haters, this is more of a compliment, roundabout way before I get to my question with you. But I see so often, I think people get caught up in addressing the stupidity that you see in comments rather than someone like yourself that has just an wealth of knowledge. And not saying that you do this all the time by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're more focused on delivering your knowledge, your interpretation of things, boy, do I love it. But when you get into addressing some of the stupidity within comments, oh boy, that's when I want to turn it off, because it's like I
I
sign
hear
on
you.
to listen to you because your wealth. I mean, it's unbelievable how much you know about just the overall game of football, but college football. So anyway, yeah, I hope you took that as a compliment. I know it.
I do take
That's
that as a compliment
good.
because I don't want to be on here whining and complaining on a regular basis. So you will
No, I
never
don't.
see that.
No.
But it just kind of overflowed on that particular occasion.
Oh
So
yeah, no, I
like
gotcha.
a couple people commented kind of like thinking like this is the first time that anybody ever attacked me and I went on some kind of rampage. And I'm like, no, this is every
The
day. I
millionth
just
time.
it just kind of hit me. And one thing that's not going to speak well to what you just said is that actually it seems like more people respond and watch that sort of video than they do just me talking about football anyway. But
Yeah, I can see that. Um, Definitely can see that. People
but thanks
love
for
a
calling.
fight. People love a fight. But anyway,
Yes,
so
they love to fight.
the what I found very interesting. I'm an OSU Buckeye fan. Grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Geez, I didn't miss a home game until I went away for college. So know the team extremely well. Was there when we lost to Michigan State,
Hmm.
but that was devastating. But anyway, I heard the Peach Bowl. The guy giving his address to the Ohio State media and talking about, and I've always wondered about bowls and how these really high profile people, why they get into them, why they're heading up bowls. Well, you know, there's only one reason, and it's money. And it hit me as, and don't get me wrong, I love bowls. I grew up with them, but when you take a closer look, I mean, they are, and I'd love your opinion. I have an opinion about it, but I'm not completely formed in my opinion. So I wanted kind of your thoughts. But when you look into the finances of these things, they rake in money, and they kind of hide behind their donations and the things that they do with charity, which I'm not trying to bash bowls and what they do in terms of their charity work. That's great, but there's a lot more money being made there than just what they donate. And they're kind of hiding behind that. And they have for a long, long, long time made an immense amount of money. And, why this money isn't going to, there's so much money in this sport that isn't going to the players. And I feel like that's one area that I've really never heard anybody discuss. It's just bashing the Bulls, save the Bulls because we're going to, lose them in the 12-team playoff. And, everybody has this affinity for the bowl season, but nobody ever discusses all the money and where all that money's going and how it's kind of messed up that none of it is going to the players. And I know, again, obviously all the money that the schools make as well. But anyway, I'll stop there and just kind of interested to hear your thoughts, because I mean they talked about the 60 plus million that they've donated in the past 10 years, and it immediately got me into looking into the finance of these bowls. And they obviously don't have to disclose everything, but you can find out some things, and boy, they make a pretty penny. And not to mention what those people that are heading up the bowls, what their salaries look like. I mean, it's, yeah, anyway.
So Patrick, you're telling us that the folks at Chick-fil-A were commenting about their Peach Bowl donations and the workings of the Peach Bowl. I didn't see this.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The gentleman that is in charge of the Peach Bowl, what I was
Yep.
commenting about, that he
Okay.
went to Ohio State to
Okay.
actually give them the formal invitation to
Hmm.
join the Peach Bowl.
Okay.
And he was talking about all the charity work that the Peach Bowl does, and he disclosed how much they've donated to
Okay.
charity in the
Yep.
past, 10 years or so. Or I can't, I could be wrong on the timeline, but we're talking 60 plus $1 million, that they've donated to charity. And he was touting that. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, they're raking in that kind of money, you know, these collectives that are in charge of these various bowls. And when you look into the bowls, they have full-time staff people making significant amount of money. And it just, again, it's one other area of college athletics that is making a heck of a lot of money, but none of it seems to be going to the kids. And I've just never heard that discussed.
So that is your major issue with all of it, is that the student athletes aren't making anything from the bowl games?
I mean, if that much money is being made and they're the ones out on the field, I would venture to say that they should be making the money.
Yep.
Like,
So it's a
it,
little ironic, though, that you're
yeah,
making this argument in today's college football climate versus 5 years ago. Because obviously the players 5 years ago didn't have any ability or access to money legally under the guidelines, where now that they do. Now they're not being paid by the school, not supposed to be, not being paid by the bowls or the sponsors of the bowls or any of that. So you're right. You're dead on. Nothing's changed there, but the players do have the ability now to make money, of course. They just don't make it via the bowls or the schools or the sponsors. And maybe they should. Maybe we could keep these players from quitting, from opting out, if they made a portion of the revenue of the bowl sponsorship.
right.
I've been suggesting that for years.
Oh, see, there's where I was curious. Is I hadn't heard that, so I was, and obviously I don't listen to everything that you say. So I was just curious if you had thought about. So you do think that they should?
Yeah. So my
Yeah.
my two, ever since these players started to opt out,
Right.
and the first collection of players I remember were Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, Stanford, LSU,
Right.
2016. Those were the first two that I remember. I'm not saying they're the first two.
Right.
And then it just ballooned from there, just mushroomed from there. That, yeah, I started making the suggestion 3 or 4 years ago that two things be done. Number one would be, okay, so during the regular season, the schools and the conferences make money based on the TV deal from ESPN or Fox. But in postseason play, they make money from the TV deal from ESPN, which has 40 to 43 of the games. So basically just ESPN. CBS has one, Fox has one or two games. Plus, they earn money from, and I don't know what the percentages are. I don't know exactly how it works, but obviously there is a corporation sponsoring the bowl. And I have looked into how much money they are providing the bowl game, and it's
Yeah.
usually 5, 8, 11, $12 million, something in that range, that you would think that a slice of that could be distributed to the players and would, out of all fairness, you seem to be coming at this from a fairness standpoint, that they're the commodity, they're the ones that are doing the work and providing the entertainment that makes the bowl possible, of course, are the
Right.
players. So why not share the equity with them? I'm coming at it from that perspective, but also just from the perspective of good business, that maybe we can keep some of these players from opting out by sharing the wealth, the revenue with them from the sponsorships. So that's
Absolutely.
one thought I had. The other thought I had is more of a negative reinforcement, that the players are signing contracts. Their scholarship is a form of a contract. And so I'm not understanding that they're not fulfilling the completion of the contract of the scholarship by not playing in the last game. So it's well known that if a team qualifies for postseason play, they're going to be selected to a bowl and play in a bowl game. So that should be part of the scholarship agreement, in my estimation. And that player should have to pay back a portion of their scholarship if they didn't play in the bowl game. You don't like that?
I see where you're going with that, but if we're gonna go there, then we need full disclosure in terms of how much money everybody's making, and they should receive a portion of that.
Okay. So
like, if you're gonna go to that extent in terms of like making them pay something back,
yeah.
But then again, we're also now entering into like the reason those things can't, from my understanding, can't be enforced are due to like the relationship that is actually, it's not an employer-employee relationship where something like that could be enforced.
Okay, so
it's more of a scholarship where the student athlete, they're giving them a scholarship to go to school, right? And the athletics is kind of a secondary in the way things are today and historically as they've been.
Yeah, historically it is. It's not
right, and it is today too. Right, but yeah, again, but if we're going to enter into a whole new way of thinking about it in terms of forcing players to like pay back if they're not participating, again, I think that we've changed the relationship that has historically been there in terms of how these universities have gotten away with not paying these players, but made massive amounts of money and used these players to prop up their universities, to prop up their enrollment rates. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, as I've seen on your show, in terms of why they support college football, you know, and all the benefits that come along with having a great football team and how it helps your enrollment rates, your endowment. And then, you know, I mean, I watched your shows. They're
absolutely
brilliant. The one that you had the gentleman on that broke down the different endowments for the Big Ten versus the SEC.
Yes, our guy,
like there's so much money going on right in here. And so like, I mean, there's no other way to put it than college athletics has been using players for a long time. And the benefits in terms of the financial gain that they get far exceed the benefits that are given to players, in my mind, that is. And that we've just gone to we're at right now is it's become such an imbalance right now that like it's impossible to overlook. And so like, you know, they had to make a move and do something, and they opened up NIL because, you know, they're doing everything they can to keep, you know, people, you know, from attacking where the real money is at in the sport. And they're hoping it delays it. So anyway, I know that was a lot, but
so Patrick, you bring up some great points. So why don't we backtrack a little bit, because I want us to go through this, because I think there's a lot to unpack, and maybe we can come to an agreement or an understanding, or maybe we can't, which is fine. We can both learn from each other. So first and foremost, let's understand that about half of the Power 5 programs, I may be misspeaking, I don't want to get this wrong, it's either half of the Power 5 programs or half of the FBS football programs lose money. So not all of them are making egregious amounts of money. And those players are still getting scholarships, which are highly valuable. So it's not like this is a windfall for Bowling Green and Western Kentucky and San Jose State and all of them, just making these windfalls of money.
Right. But you also, what I would say is, in response to that, is then why do they still exist? They still exist because they do have a what would you call it? Somebody there to catch them. And that being, for instance, if you want to look at Rutgers and their financial system and their financial situation, excuse me, who has stepped in to help Rutgers? The state of New Jersey. And so there's the financing that's coming from many different angles that are helping these institutions offset those expenses and to help keep them afloat. But there's no denying that having a quality football team and being a part of a conference actually helps drive enrollment in the overall student body. Right. That's why they're willing to take those sorts of losses. But again, somebody's there to kind of make them whole and to keep them afloat. I get it. There are some institutions that are making and doing far better than others. But again, we're back into, not all the, finances are disclosed, they would be within, say publicly traded companies. And so there's just it's hard to understand which teams are completely mismanaging their financial situations and which teams aren't. But again, they still have that.
In some ways, it is similar to the NBC television network purchasing the Olympics and losing money.
Right.
It's not strictly an accounting of we're going to lose money. They are benefiting from all the periphery benefits to having the Olympics, the prestige involved, the benefit to all their other shows and programs and outlets and applications and platforms and all of it. But they are technically losing money broadcasting the Olympics. They are paying more than they are able to incur through ad revenue. And so that happens with a lot of universities out there, that they are paying more to play football than they earn making from playing football. So, Patrick, let's take it from the scholarship standpoint.
Yep.
Okay. So the average college football player receives a scholarship that has to be worth how much money per year? Just the education itself. It's got to be worth what, $40,000 or $50,000 a year.
Right.
So over the course of their career, they are being given something of value of 180.
But giving up something too.
Sure. Hang on. So they're getting value of $200,000, let's say, and that doesn't include the benefits of the contacts and relationships and all of that they will benefit from if they're smart and pursue those, that their football career will put them in contact with, and they will be able to build relationships with and make business contacts with people that they otherwise would have no way of reaching. Okay. So that's one periphery benefit that can't be calculated. In addition to the tangible value of a college education, they eat great, they get the best nutrition, they get the best training, they get the best of everything.
As of recently.
That's what we're talking about.
I know.
We can't do anything about what happened in 1975.
Yeah, but wait, nutrition, they just recently were allowed in the past, and I don't mean to get bogged down in the details, so I'm not trying to be contrarian here, but it was more recently, right, that universities were able to actually provide multiple meals to their employees. And I mean recently, within the past 15 years, I believe.
Okay. So
but anyway,
and there's probably a million other things that we could go through.
But they still had to give it. But to your point, though, and I agree with what you're saying, but they still give, you can get a scholarship to a university and not be a football, a player. You can get a scholarship to a university and it be purely academic, and you're not given the same handcuffs that you are as a football player.
What handcuffs do the football players have?
NIL, working jobs. Nobody's sitting here watching and saying that somebody that got an academic scholarship can't make money off of themselves or can't create a social media platform. Or what about Zuckerberg, who created Facebook? Well, stole Facebook, but I don't want to get into all that. But like,
Yeah,
what he did, like a football player couldn't do that.
couldn't before. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Right.
But like, right. But there's like, why were they doing that? And again, it's because there's so much more money involved in this and surrounding football, and they gave different rules to football players than they did to other students that were receiving full-time or
Athletes,
scholarships as
not just
well.
football players, but athletes.
Even athletes, right? Yeah. Right.
But now we've arrived at a place where beginning I'm losing track of time, a year and a half ago, last July, that they now legally can profit from their name, image, and likeness. So what else do you want to be provided for the players? You want them to be paid by the university, it sounds.
Oh, without a doubt, they should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not good enough that they can profit on their name, image, and likeness.
Oh, I think I think that this going on right now has created the wild, wild west because they're not wanting people to gain access to where the real money is.
Well,
And that's what's like the TV deals that are taking place, all the money that funnels in from bowl games,
sure.
There's far much more money.
I don't believe that paying the players is going to prohibit them from pursuing NIL money. Why would they do that?
No, they should be able to.
Professional athletes make all sorts of money. That doesn't mean that they don't cut commercial deals on the side.
Right. No. We're on the same page there. I don't have any problem with NIL.
Well, I know you don't, but you want to pay the players. So once we do that, once we officially pay the players and a salary, then we open this up to all sorts of issues.
Okay. But I think the real question is, why shouldn't they be paid?
There is no reason that they shouldn't be paid. I'm not saying that they don't. Well, first of all, they are being paid. Let's
No. I mean, paid by the universities.
Well, they are being paid by the university in the form of a scholarship and all the other luxuries I just outlined. So they are being paid $50,000, $60,000 a year at least by the university.
Right.
The value of their education and all the other peripheries is a $50,000 or $60,000 income. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay. Because I know that from just having one child who went to school, and she didn't get a scholarship. She got grants and so forth, but
I've got student loans, so trust me, I know. Yeah.
So they are being paid by the university.
Right.
Maybe not as much as you would like or others would like, but they are being paid. So once you start to add to that actual income, how do you navigate? Okay, who gets what? Does the starting quarterback make more than the third string left tackle, or do they make all the same amount of money? How do you determine who makes what?
Well, how does the NFL?
Oh my goodness. We're going to have players negotiating contracts. We're going to have 17-year-old recruits negotiating contracts with universities.
Again, so the thing that gets me with this is...
And then, Patrick, I'm sorry to cut you off. When that 17-year-old 5-star turns out to be a bust, but is still making $1 million a year, what are we going to do about that?
I think there's going to be a learning curve. I agree. Without a doubt. There'll be aches and pains. Curves. There absolutely will be. But the thing that I get back to is like the simple truth of like, these people football players, they are the ones that are out there on the field. We're turning on the games to watch them. We fall in love with the players, which the multiple players that go through a particular school, we fall in love with the school, we fall in love with the traditions, so on and so forth. But for them to be making so much money and for that not to be given to those folks as well, to me that's, and especially given the fact that they have so much money that they can build these outrageous facilities
for the players.
Right. But if you'd ask the players, would they rather have a toned down facility and money in their pocket, an adequate facility, and not, slides and all the ridiculous shit that you see within places, or their mother taken care of, or that they could pay healthcare bills? I just don't foresee a scenario in which players would be like, oh, absolutely, I'd rather have a slide.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that there's nothing valid about what you're saying. There's a lot valid what you're saying, but I think that there are so many pitfalls, and not use Dexter is getting to something that I haven't even gotten to yet, is that these guys would cease to be amateur athletes. So they're no longer amateur athletes under your plan. And let's also understand that we're going to treat them like adults now. We're going to treat them like big boys. And you know what? After 6 games, you suck. We're cutting you. You're gone. Your scholarship's gone. Bye.
I don't like, and I would also say that it was the adults in the room that led us down this path. The greed of the universities and chasing money and making it bigger and building your stadiums and having your 100,000 people show up, and losing sight of what actually is important in this situation that has led to all this. I mean, if they didn't promote the sport the way that they have, it wouldn't be as big as it is, and they wouldn't be making as much money as they have. Again, if we're going to go down this path, clearly the adults in the room have led us down this path, and they're the ones that continue to rake in the money year after year, decade after decade here, and all on the backs of these players. And so, given, I am going to say that they should be cut in on this, given that that's where they decided to take it, because I don't know one single player that during their time, now maybe after, is in an administrative position, but I mean, all these decisions that have led to the game to being where they are at is not due to the players on the field. I mean, you see where I'm going with that, right?
Sure. I'm going to take off on one of your points to go back to something that I bring up from time to time. On at least two occasions, maybe 3 occasions when I was at ESPN, I went to a luncheon. Jim Delaney, Big Ten commissioner, was there speaking. And he makes a great point. Basically, the genie's out of the bottle now. But if you could go back 50, 55 years to the mid 60s, the early 70s, and there was such a control and restriction on these student athletes in regards to how much they were pushed, how much was taken from them in terms of their time. They were still treated like students. They're students, athletes. They're students first, then they're athletes. They go to school, that's the priority. Then they go to practice, and it's very limited. Film, very limited. Weightlift, very limited. And they are treated like students who just happen to be playing a sport. And of course, but with the popularity of those sports, then those limits get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to where we are 50 years later, where it's a
Right.
job. And we should have never let it get to that point.
Which is, and I don't mean to take it to a political side of it, which is capitalism in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating when you look at like what are the restraints within the NFL system that keep things in check.
Well, the NFL is running a business, therefore.
Right, but they have a lot of socialist principles in place.
Well, sure.
That keep things in check.
Although the NFL itself thrives on capitalism.
Of course.
Itself, but yes, internally, it's a socialist.
Right.
Because they need all of their units to stay healthy. They can't have them cannibalizing each other and warring against each other. And that's what I think, if we're going to go that route.
That's an interesting, though, what you just said right there, right? Like that it needs the socialist aspect to it, right? It's and I only say it because I think people confuse and don't, they think socialism, they think bad. And I'm not trying to get off on a tangent. I think that there's just very valuable things that you can see within the NFL that work very, very well in keeping things, everybody. And I do think that there's aspects obviously to that within, look at the media rights deals within, the Big Ten or any institution. They split them fairly. Right.
Sure. But if
and
the outer world outside the NFL was treated as socialist, then the NFL would not be thriving. Yeah, obviously.
I would like. And I'm not like trying to parrot socialism here. I'm just trying to like. People often hear socialism and they automatically jump to that it's some like, crazy scary thing. And I only pointed that out just so that hopefully people see, okay, wow, there are a lot of aspects to the NFL that have socialist principles, and there can be some good there. Total socialism and dictator socialism that we see within, Cuba and various countries, obviously very, very bad. Like that. I'm not trying to like parrot some like,
Sure. What would help the NFL or the college football system would be for a commissioner / governing body to take over all of college football and share the wealth, share the commodities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for the health and prosperity of all.
If we're going to commoditize and make college football out to make so much money, which clearly the people in charge have done. And I get it, because there's an appetite for it, because who doesn't love college football? I do. I want to watch every day. I get pissed when they're not on TV, so yeah.
Well, Patrick, we appreciate
it's interesting. I appreciate your insight. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You too. All right. We'll keep it working here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. And let's move it on to our buddy Christian at Ballard Sports Media.
What's up, Mark? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm ready for signing day. Alabama looks like they have a good class. There's rumors about Caden Proctor from Iowa being flipped and possibly recommitting. And I love this time of year with the holidays. But as a college football fan, the big holiday is early signing day. Speaking of, what I wanted to come on and talk to you about tonight was Texas and their class. Obviously, we know about Arch Manning, but they have a couple different guys in the class, such as running back Cedric Baxter. When you look at him, I don't have it pulled up. I know there's Cedric Baxter, but basically, I don't know. But what do you think about Texas's class overall as a unit, and then I'm not here to start like the whole Texas is back thing, but what do you think it is saying about Sarkeesian and the program he's building, if anything?
You're talking about this current 2023 Texas class?
This upcoming, yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't follow recruiting. I really I cannot comment on Texas's class. I'll pull it up and I'll let you know that. So anytime Texas or any of these other teams that we have team channels for recruit or get a commitment from somebody, I'll post a video about it. But that's about as much as I know. Of course, Arch Manning's at the top of the class. We know all about him, and I know Anthony Hill just committed a couple of weeks ago at linebacker. I'm looking at it. I know all these names. And so we got 22 hard commits, and we've got the fourth rated class in the country. So, yeah, I can speak to this, that Texas has recruited almost this well for the last 12 or 13 years since they last went to a BCS championship game in 2009.
Right.
And, of course, have not done anything of significance. So Steve Sarkisian has yet to prove to me that he can, like, I'm not wowed by this recruiting class. Is he doing his job? Absolutely. He's doing it extremely well, bringing in this type of class. But his predecessors have brought in similar classes and not one. And he has coached 2 seasons, and his second edition is better than the first, but it's still nothing exceptional. So to me, Steve Sarkisian has not proven to be a really good head football coach. And this is now his third stop at a premier program. And he's proven to be a marginal coach to date.
Absolutely. I would fully agree with you. And, I love Steve Sarkisian. I appreciate what he did as the offensive coordinator at Alabama in 2020 and even back to 2018, 2019. You look at their class, obviously they got Arch Manning, who's the number 1 overall player. I do have it pulled up actually right here. They got the number 1 running back in Cedric Baxter. They got the number 1 linebacker. They got the 3rd overall safety. They got the 6th overall wide receiver. I could go down the list. Basically, they are in a great position of talent. The question is, can Sarkisian take that talent, put it on the field, especially the offensive firepower that he's bringing in, and can he do something with it in the Big 12 and eventually in a couple years the SEC, of course, because we know that Oklahoma and Texas are moving. But I think his recruiting is great and spot on. But what good is talent if you don't know how to coach it up? And I'm not here to say Sark doesn't know how to do that, but it's clear that we haven't really seen it yet.
No, we haven't. And so I'm not saying that he won't achieve at Texas. He's off to an okay start. He had an awful first season, but they got off to a strong start, and then they just blew a lot of games in the fourth quarter. And now he's working on the second of 2 really good recruiting classes. And this team that he had this year was really close to doing something special. So, yeah, he has the opportunity to prove me wrong, but I did not think he earned this job. I don't know why he was hired, but
I can tell you why.
doing well. He's building something. We'll see if he can handle it and if he can coach them to big wins and not blow 2 touchdown leads to Texas Tech in the fourth quarter like he's done now for 2 years.
Yeah, that's obviously a big issue. I mean, you can't be blowing leads, losing multiple games. I mean, I think didn't they go like 7-5 in his first year? Was it 7-5 last year?
He went 5-7 last year, and
Oh,
then
okay, I
it
got
was 8-4 this year. They Oklahoma State did not turn out to be a very good football team. They lost to them. They had a 2 touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. They had a 2 touchdown lead in the fourth quarter to Texas Tech, who's a decent team, but not a team that one of the 10 most talented rosters in the country should be losing to. And then the other games, of course, the TCU game, they were just completely dominated at the line of scrimmage. They played well against Alabama, and they played well otherwise, but for the most part. But he's got a long way to go. And again, I don't know. I don't know. I evaluate him at USC and Washington as being a guy who, you know, I like to not just evaluate coaches based on what they accomplished at the university when they were there, but compare them to, okay, what was the standard? You know, what were they given? What was handed to them when they took over? What did they do with it? And then when they left, did things get better? Did they get worse? Things before them, were they better or were they worse? And with Steve Sarkisian, on all fronts, they were generally better before and after at Washington, and at USC, better before and after.
Right. I get what you're saying there. And then the other thing before you let me go, yeah, I'm really excited about this year with Alabama, this class at least, not this season, because obviously that was a disappointment. But it seems like we got a really good class. We just flipped Keon Keeley. I am a little worried though, because that's a lot of 5 stars. That's a lot of commitments to bring in for a class. You know, we got a couple guys like Justice Haynes out of Georgia, and Georgia's right behind us. I don't know. What do you think? You think we can keep every player?
I know that there is more drama among the top teams in the SEC than there is anywhere else on signing day. For
Right.
whatever reason. So, no, you're not going to keep everyone, I don't think, not based on past history, but you're also going to flip some guys. And you're probably, this is what I've learned and picked up from National Signing Day. And when I said at the beginning of our conversation here, Ballard, that I don't follow recruiting, of course I have to a certain extent. I follow it by connection. I follow it by all the people I bring on here that talk about their particular teams, and they provide all the recruiting insight. And I'm kind of like the guy that on NFL draft day, I want to watch the NFL draft for a weekend and take it all in. But for the 6 weeks leading up to the NFL draft, I don't want to hear about all the speculation that they could take him or they could take him or they could take him. I don't want to hear about all that. I want to wait until draft weekend when everybody gets selected. Then I know that he was taken by the Jets and he was taken by the Lions and where the people are going to be. Same thing with recruiting.
Yeah.
I don't care about all the speculation for 12 months concerning all these guys. And he decided here and then he flipped 3 months later. And I just don't have the patience to keep up with it. But on National Signing Day, absolutely. I'm all in. I want to know Texas's final class. I want to see it. I want to know about every player and who they are and what they could potentially be. So,
Absolutely.
to your point about Alabama and the SEC, is that Ohio State, for example, they usually start really strong. And they finish strong too. They always have a top 5 class, something in that range. But they pretty much button up their class early, and there's like no drama. There wasn't with Urban Meyer, and Ryan Days followed suit. They're not flipping guys. They're not having guys flipped. We know what their class is, and they just stand pat. And they usually get passed by a couple teams on National Signing Day. They usually start the day like number 2 or 3. They get passed 1 or 2 times, and they finish 4 or 5. And there's all this drama and all this flipping among Georgia and Alabama and those 2 in particular, but some other ones, Texas and some other teams outside the conference, but within the SEC, LSU. And so I will tell you that about National Signing Day and Alabama's closing run. And Nick Saban usually gets more of those flips than he loses by far. So
Absolutely.
he always closes strong.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to signing day. Obviously this Wednesday, and we'll just have to see where all these players want to go. And you know, best of luck to all the teams out there. And I think Alabama just needs to focus on Kansas State right now. I think, if anything, and go play in the Sugar Bowl.
Absolutely. And I am so impressed by Nick Saban's culture that has been built there at Alabama by him. And he is the first and foremost person to credit, but a lot of other people are involved, that the likes of a Bryce Young and Will Anderson are committed to playing in the Sugar Bowl. And I wish we lived in a different world where they didn't have to be patted on the back and complimented for doing that, that was the normal thing to do, but it's not. So I congratulate them. I admire them. I admire Nick Saban. I said this in a video the other day. He obviously, despite some of the criticism this year for losing a couple games and also not playing well against the likes of Texas A&M and a few other teams, that they're obviously still doing things right. And he still has built a culture that's strong enough, just like you know as well as I do, in 2019, where they could have had massive opt-outs for the Citrus Bowl against Michigan, and they did not, that there's something different going on at Alabama where Nick Saban has built that kind of respect and teamwork to keep guys invested and focused and attached to that program until the mission is accomplished at the end of the season.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Thank you,
Merry
Ballard.
Christmas.
Merry
And
Christmas.
love all you guys at the Voice of College Football.
I appreciate that, Ballard. Thank you so much. I am going to make one quick statement before I take Hunter's call. Hunter would be next. So some of you won't necessarily want to hear this because I am going to go on a political rant for about 15 seconds, just because I don't want to have something misconstrued based on the conversation with our first caller, second caller, whatever he was, Patrick. I am a red-blooded American capitalist, supply and demand, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, the First Amendment, the Constitution, to the hilt, 100% plus, to the hilt. I was merely making the statement that there are, and I didn't necessarily make this statement, I was just agreeing with him, that there are elements within our system here in America that have socialistic tenets that are applicable. For example, we have the weak, we have the old within our population that have to be taken care of, and they should be taken care of. So, for example, we're not a cutthroat capitalist society that if you can't earn $1 and you can't do it yourself, you're out in the cold, and we don't care if you've been maimed or are disabled or are 98 years old. Forget it. You're done. You have to lay out on the street. That would be capitalism at its most severe. Of course not. No, we can be capitalists. We can be Americans. We can be all about supply and demand, but still have a heart and pool the resources that we have to help those that are genuinely, that's the key word, genuinely, legitimately, that need it. Okay. Enough on that point. Hunter, what's going on tonight?
How's it going, Mark?
I am doing well. How are you?
Good. Excited about bowl season. Ready to see Alabama take on Kansas State, like you just said a minute ago. I wish we didn't live in a world where we didn't have to congratulate kids on playing for their teams, but unfortunately, we live in that sort of society now where it's all about now. So, like you said, kudos to Will Anderson and Bryce Young for stepping up and leading the team.
Absolutely. And it is a credit to them and others. There are others on their team and other teams where, I wish.
Well, let me ask you this, Mark. What do you think?
Had that opportunity to leave and not continue the season and finish the season. And so a credit to them. And I don't blame those players for doing that.
Well, what do you think about the kid from Ohio State that's opting out of the whole playoffs, that wide receiver? That to me, this is just my personal opinion. That is absolutely wrong.
Well, we don't know what the truth is
for them to do that,
based on what we are told. And I'm not saying that this is the truth. he's not healthy. He hasn't played.
Okay, like
He hasn't played a meaningful snap since the first game of the season. He's been
okay. I didn't know that. I thought that he was okay.
he's
I
got
was
2
misled
catches
then.
the whole season.
Okay,
This is what's happened was he got hurt on like the second or third series of the Notre Dame game after he caught like 2 passes for 3 yards. And he has tried at least 2 or 3 games that I can think of, and he's run like 2 or 3 routes, and then he's out of the game because he's pulled his hamstring again.
Okay. All right, that's
He
my
hasn't
fault.
been on the field in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's my fault. I was misled then. I thought that he was a kid who had pretty production and just opted out because he wanted to go to the draft.
Well, I think the reason he made the statement that he did, which I can't recall reading it, but it was basically that, I love my team, my universities, and all the good things that they typically say. But then he said, I have decided to focus on uh, the NFL draft, etc. I think he probably felt inclined to make that statement because at no point in the season was it stated by Ryan Day or anyone else that Jackson Smith and Jigba is done for the season. He's out. It was always, we're trying to get him back on the field. We're trying to get him back on the field. We're doing our best. He might be able to play this week, and then he never does, and he never did. And so it was always just kind of out there.
Yeah. No, I think that with NIL, I think this is going to be a good. I'm not a big, huge NIL guy. I don't like some of the things that it's done to the sport. But I think one upside that we might get out of this whole deal is kids being contractually bound to play in bowl games and to play to where they can't opt out of these types of situations.
That's what I would like to see happen by the NIL collectives, but I don't know if they're going to take it to that degree.
Well, they should. I mean,
Yes, they should.
Here's my thing with the whole opt out thing. If you commit to a team and that team has paid your college tuition, given you, all the things, the luxuries that those players get, you should be bound to play for that team unless there are some circumstances that are beyond your control,
Yes,
like
you're
hurt
injured. That should be the only circumstance outside of a death in the family or something like that. But yes, you're injured. That's it. Just like any other game. What is going to keep these players from opting out with 2 weeks left in the season?
Exactly. It's a slippery slope. And my the whole argument with not playing bowl games is I might get hurt is, well, you played the other 12 games of the season and didn't and took that risk, so you're not going to take that risk in one more game to help your team potentially win a championship?
Well, what championship? What championship are you going to win?
Or like a bowl game or something like that. I'm not like I'm talking national championship, but like you win a playoff game, especially when we're going to this system
Well, we
now.
don't
We're
have
going
any
to 12
opt-outs in the
teams.
playoffs. We have yet to have an opt-out in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in any bowl games, I mean, I think it's ethically wrong to opt out of any game.
Sure it is. You're right. I completely agree. And the only 2 things, and I don't know if you heard the earlier caller, my only 2 suggestions, and I haven't exactly brainstormed this for 5 hours, they just came to me, is number 1, pay the players a portion of the bowl sponsorship. So these sponsors, these corporations pay these bowls 5 million, 10 million, whatever they pay them, give a slice to the players. That's an idea. Not saying that they should do that for sure, but that's an idea. But the one idea that I would like to really go to is that scholarship is a contract. And the contract is that you play football to receive an education and all the other benefits from the scholarship. Well, you didn't finish the season. Therefore, you need to pay back a portion of the scholarship.
Ding, 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 ding. You just said the same thing.
Send it back to us. Whatever.
I said the same thing the exact same thing you just said to somebody else the other day, Mark. I made that exact point of if you don't play, you
Great
have to pay
minds,
back.
Connor.
Yeah. So let's just shift gears a little minute. Ohio State and Georgia.
Yep.
I just don't see a way for I just don't see Ohio State winning this game. I think they have some of the same problems that for the reasons I stated that I thought Michigan would beat Ohio State is sort of the same reasons that I think Georgia will win. What do you see him?
Okay. Here's my basic thought on this game. That if Ohio State has its head in the game, and I'm not talking about effort. I think that the effort's going to be there. I think they're going to try, but there's a difference between being supremely laser focused, confident, all the things that I know of Georgia versus being like, I don't know if we can do it. Maybe we can do it. I know we're really good, but look what happened against Michigan and having doubt. And I don't know if Ohio State is going to take this as a second life, we've got a second chance. We can prove all the doubters wrong. We can make up for that loss against Michigan. We've got a second chance, and they're going to embrace that and run through a wall, or they're going to be like, there was a week between them losing to Michigan and thinking they missed out on a playoff and before they got that selection. And that's a lot of time to be like, well, we're going to play in a meaningless bowl game. I'm going to the draft or I'm checking out. And for you to have to bring Ryan Day, for you to have to bring that team back mentally prepared and focused to get back locked into, okay, we got to get back to practice. Now, I know they went to practice the next day, and a lot of good things were said by the players, like we still had full buy-in and we were still ready to go. All of those things were stated and sound good, but I'll put it this way. When Georgia walks out on that field, I am going to be shocked if they don't deliver what I believe they're going to deliver, which is a great defensive effort, running game, offensive line, Stetson Bennett doing his thing. I'm going to get exactly what I expect out of Georgia, what I've been watching for the last 2+ years, or maybe the last 5 years during the Kirby Smart era since he lifted them to this level in 2017. Ohio State, I don't know. It's a wild card. They could be great. They could be on point. The start of this game is going to be imperative for Ohio State to be what they should be in this, because they got to be, they got to prove something to themselves. I think their psyche is fragile.
Would you agree that Georgia is a more physical football team than Ohio
Yes.
State? Okay, good. Well, at least we have some.
Don't tell Tommy Eichenberg that. Don't tell JT Tuimoloau that. Don't tell Teron Vincent that. So there are dudes on Ohio State's team that are just as tough as any player on the Georgia football team. But collectively, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there, and maybe this is just something that I don't know if you feel the same way, but generally speaking, these SEC teams are more physical teams than some of the other teams in the country.
Oh, in the country or in the Big Ten?
Yeah. Well, in the country in general, but yeah, I guess you could say in the Big Ten as well.
Are they just more talented? I don't know that the SEC is more physical than the Big Ten.
The top of the SEC is. I mean, maybe not. You take Alabama, Georgia, and
no, they're more talented.
Yeah,
I don't think they're tougher or more physical.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because I haven't gotten from the Ohio State perspective, so I don't know if you've gotten the intel on this or not. Kind of comes to recruiting. The kid that flipped from Ohio State to Florida State. Have you heard what exactly went into that?
Flip from Ohio State to Florida State?
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
a few days ago.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was a
Are you
quarterback.
talking about the quarterback in 24?
Yeah, it might have been in 24.
Dylan Raiola? Did he flip to
No.
Florida? I didn't know that I know he decommitted from Ohio State. I didn't know that he flipped.
Yeah, I don't know the guy. Can't remember the kid's name, but he was Ohio State commit and flipped to Florida State.
Okay.
So apparently the answer to that question, and you hadn't heard anything. I just didn't know if you've heard
Give me
anything from
2 seconds to figure out who that is. Maybe
on the
somebody
Alabama
knows.
on the Alabama front. I think Keon Keeley, the kid that we just picked up, who was at one time committed to Notre Dame, he could be just as good as. I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to be. He could be Will Anderson is. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good or better than Will Anderson, but he has the potential to be that caliber of a guy.
Yeah, so I just want to clear up this Ohio State decommit from 2024. So there's a quarterback, Dylan Raiola. He is the #1 quarterback in the 24 class. He committed to Ohio State months ago. He has ties to Nebraska. That's who I thought he had flipped to, if he was going to flip, or maybe he's just opening up his recruitment again. But I don't know anything about a Florida State commit from Ohio State.
That's what I've seen. I would have to go back to look on that.
Okay.
See on 3, right. But
you do your homework back. All right. One last whatever else you've got for us here.
What do you think the keys to the game for Kansas State is in this matchup?
Kansas State, Alabama.
I don't know very much about Kansas State, so I couldn't speak on.
Well, Kansas State's limited in the passing game. There's no question about that. They're just flat out limited in the passing game. If Will Howard is going to start at quarterback for them, he can move. He's not a statue, but he's not a threat running the ball like they've had typically at Kansas State. They usually have running quarterbacks, and Adrian Martinez, their starter, is one. But Will Howard's been the guy that's a better passer. And they're not going to scare Alabama on the outside. Now, they're going to scare Alabama with Deuce Vaughn because he is one of the best backs in the nation. He is scary good, but he needs a little space. He's a little guy at 5'6", and he has got tree trunks for legs for a guy his size, but he still needs a little bit of a crease and a little bit of space. Kansas State is an excellent pass defense as well. They're top 15 in the nation in pass efficiency defense. This is going to be an interesting game, but Alabama certainly is a more talented team.
Yeah, I think I found out who I was talking about.
Okay.
Brock Glenn.
Oh yeah,
he was committed to Ohio State.
I gotcha. You're right. Yeah, I'm looking right at him. That's right, he was. So what did he want me to comment on?
I just didn't know if you had heard anything from the Ohio State side, if they just kind of decide if they was like a mutual parting of ways, or he was like genuinely flipped.
Wow. It's rarely a mutual parting of ways. So let's take this into consideration. Now, I'm strictly going by recruiting rankings because I don't scout high school kids. Anytime anyone asks me, Mark, did you see the huddle tape on such and such? No, I didn't see. I don't watch. I will see him in the spring game. That's the first I'm going to see. I'm not watching high school football. So he's the 28th rated quarterback in the country. So he obviously was a prime candidate to go to Ohio State, and they signed it, or they recruited and got a commitment from him. They offered him, but that's usually not at their level of recruitment of a quarterback. He's barely a top 500 player in the country. And like Uncle Rico's saying here in the chat, and we just talked about this on our last Ohio State show, they got a different quarterback in Lincoln Keenholz as well. So maybe they preferred him. Whether they preferred Keenholz and they kind of let Glenn know that, or vice versa, Glenn dumped them and they went the other route to plan B. We don't know. We're not privy to that kind of information.
Yeah, I just didn't know. And yeah, I thought that did strike me when I looked at his rating. But I thought maybe Ohio State knows something that everybody else don't know yet.
Well, Mike Norvell likes him.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Mark. I'll so I
Great,
will.
Hunter. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. All right, we'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Dr. C on the line. Dr. C, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great, man. I was a stressful day. I saw your show was on, man. It's just like a weight off my shoulders. I was like, I've got to call in and talk some football.
A weight off your shoulders. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
to try that for you, but I hope your day gets better, and I hope everything's okay.
I appreciate that. I had just some, always random, but I wanted to get your thoughts. I'm really I actually am more excited about the transfer portal than I was originally. At first, I thought it was a terrible thing, but the more I think about it, let's say there's a kid who wasn't recruited well and ended up in like Southern Mississippi. And just, or like a Randy Moss who just destroys it out at Marshall.
Yes.
Now that kid can then go, hey, you know what? I've been here a year. I want to test myself. I'm going to go join Tennessee. Rather than what would happen in the past is these kids would get stuck for years, like Randy Moss, for example. If the transfer portal was available, how exciting would it have been to see Randy Moss go to Florida?
I don't know that Randy Moss is your best example of this. Randy Moss was on campus as a commit, and he would have been a signee Notre Dame and Florida State. He had issues off the field.
The drug
issue prohibited him from going to somewhere like Florida State or Notre Dame.
Got you. But let's say one of those kids that wasn't recruited well, we've got Gore. Gore yesterday with Southern Miss. I mean, I would love to see that guy. He's been doing phenomenal. Let's go, transfer to K-State, for example, and see how that career. Because, if he just stayed at Southern Miss and let's say he starts breaking even more records, the first thing that's going to come to question is the quality of opponent, right?
True. Yes.
And I think that,
opponent. However, let's understand that the group of five has a pretty prominent number of players in the NFL and in the NFL draft. So it's not like he's been thrown into the abyss, never to be heard from again.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I was thinking about the other day. As you mentioned, that's like Marshall Faulk, San Diego State. I mean, back in the day, no one would have seen highlights of Marshall Faulk. Pretty much, the media was so enamored with Notre Dame, Florida State, that you just would not really hear about anyone at San Diego State. You might hear the name, see the stat on the bottom of your screen, but like nowadays, you can go to San Diego State and ball, and people know who you are, and they see the highlights.
Yep.
They see your game. I never saw a Marshall Faulk game, one of the greatest running backs ever, right?
You didn't watch the Holiday Bowl?
I must have missed that one. Yeah, I don't remember seeing him play.
That's the first time I remember Marshall Faulk. I believe was in the Holiday Bowl.
Yeah. And then my other question is, what is going to happen to junior college football now that with the transfer portal,
Yeah, it's unfortunate we don't hear about too many junior college transfers anymore like we used to.
Yeah, and you know, I had a classmate of mine who wasn't recruited highly, but went to the junior college route rather than go Division II because he said he'd be stuck there. And then he went to junior college, murdered everyone on the field, not literally, and then USC. He ends up going to USC.
Let's do the math here for a second, though, Dr. C. Let's do
Yeah.
some math here, because we're in a position right now, 2 years after this pandemic and all the guidelines that were put in place because of the pandemic, that the extra year of COVID, and now with the loosening of the red shirt restrictions, where a player can play 4 games and still be redshirted. So there are more opportunities for players to stay on campus for longer. And now we see 5th and 6th and 7th years for players, but that's going to flush itself. It's going to flush out here in the next couple of years. So the thing I'm not understanding about the transfer portal and people's concern or worry about there being a lack of positions available is, okay, we got 131 FBS teams. They've got 85 scholarships per team. They've got 105 spots on the roster per team. Okay.
Okay.
That hasn't changed, correct?
Correct.
So regardless of how many people go into the transfer portal or don't go into the transfer portal, there are still the same number of scholarships available and roster spots available. Now, that has been again compromised by all these players that are clogging up the system by not, where in the past, before the pandemic, would have graduated and moved on either to the NFL or to real life, but they're staying as 5th and 6th and 7th year players. Now, that's going to, again, cycle itself out. And I don't understand where, from a math standpoint, we won't be in a few years where we are and have been previously.
So, in other words, we're going to be completely backlogged, or
we're backlogged now.
We're backlogged now, yeah.
But it should, you know,
clear
I
up.
can do the math to know how long it's going to take to correct itself.
Yeah. Was it now? I think I misheard. I think I heard that they said that there was a player in West Virginia due to medical. It would be his 8th season of eligibility.
Yeah. I love that.
What in the world? A double major? We got a sociology, psychology major. What's going on there? The most insane thing I've ever heard.
For you to stick around to play college football for 7 or 8 years, you're most likely not good enough to play in the NFL. You're just there to get a degree, I guess. You must really love football to keep playing. But you know, the benefit for these players is to make contacts, is to obviously get an education aside from football. If, let's say, they have no football future, to get an education and to make business contacts. That's the reason you're in school.
Yeah, I mean, some NIL money. Yeah, I mean, I don't see the. I mean, obviously you love playing football, but how old is this gentleman now? He's going to be 26. Let's say he's 25, 26.
The quarterback that played for North Texas the other night is 29 years old. Now, I don't know what led to that. You know,
we have the Chris Winkie. Remember Chris Winkie, quarterback, FSU, 28. Yeah, but he played baseball first, I think.
Yeah, that was unheard of at that point. That was completely unheard of. There's a couple punters around that are like in their 30s.
Wow, I have seen some things where in junior college football, there's like a old welder that had some dream and never got to do it. Yeah. And he at 40 something, he was part of the JUCO national championship. And I mean, he worked late nights as I think a welder, a machine shop or something like that, and would show up in the morning. He made the team and he actually contributed. I mean, it's actually a really freaking awesome thing,
It is cool.
Seeing some, bald man, gray hair, with a bunch of 18-year-olds. I don't know how, but he seemed to be like an additional coach in many ways. So if anyone has some extra time, I think ESPN did a bit on him. And
Who?
I'll let you go.
Who?
What's that?
I'm just kidding.
Pardon me. There's a great documentary, and I don't know if you've probably seen it, Mark, about the Battle of Mizzou between Montana State and Montana.
I have not. And why is that the Battle of Mizzou?
I think it's that state, it's their big game, and they did a whole documentary of why it means so much to them, and of course it's there's nothing to do out there, so obviously like in the SEC it means more. What that really means is there's nothing to do on a Friday, Saturday night, compared to like Southern California, USC. I have a friend who says that if he had his way, he would go and live on a ranch in Montana or Wyoming, and nobody would bother him. There's definitely, what? Sign me up as well. I live in Houston, and after a day like today, you know what?
Yeah, there's a few people down there, aren't there?
If he needs a neighbor, I'm willing to buy some real estate.
Yeah, I've seen
Mark.
traffic. I've been down there quite a few times in the last couple of years to Houston.
Oh man, I live in what's considered the #1 city in the country to live in,
which is
I probably don't want to name it. It's right outside of Houston.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the #1 city. Safety, it's beautiful. Okay. But I'll tell you one thing. They obviously did not take the traffic in consideration. Yeah. I mean, we have some of the worst traffic, I think, in the country.
I've been down there quite a few times in the last couple of years, and interesting. Okay, yeah. I didn't know. I've been to Katy and Richmond, and can't even think of the other.
Well, it's called the Woodlands. It's the Woodlands, yeah. It's a gorgeous place. I mean, beautiful, very nice people, super safe, friendly. I can go at midnight. It's relaxing. You can take a walk, whatnot.
Before I left ESPN, they had just opened a facility in Houston, and I was thinking about making a move there.
Yeah, I think I had a friend that worked there for a while. He's now a teacher. He does the audio visual stuff for a school up here.
Good stuff. All right, Dr. C. Good to hear from you.
Hey, it's great always hearing from you, and shout out to the chat. Thank you for being so patient with me.
Thank you so much. We got Christopher on the line. Look at this. Christopher's calling us tonight. What's going on?
Big surprise. Oh, no, Mark, I don't want to, excuse me, I've got a cough. I just wanted to kind of add a few thoughts, and I'd rather hear from you actually than from me. So interject anytime you feel like you want to do that. But, they were, some of the topic, I guess, was about, I kind of look at it a little differently, and I understand the free market a little bit, not very well, to be fair. I understand a lot of these changes maybe are good for the market. I mean, I'm not so stupid I can't kind of put that together, but I think somebody's talked about that. One Scoop John, I don't want to pick on him. I think he's probably pretty smart, but he says that some of these things should lead to more parity, which I mean, I'm not going to say that isn't necessarily possible. I mean, you give the same advantages, I guess that's what they are, or at least extend those same advantages to as many teams as you can within the market. I guess that's the only way I know how to look at it, to be honest with you. And then maybe that would maybe point or lend itself maybe to a greater percentage of teams maybe that could, is the ultimate. I guess my question is, will all these changes maybe lead to a better market for the sport?
When you say all these changes, are you talking about NIL and the transfer portal?
Well, I'm trying to take a more expansive look at it, because I mean, we could probably get down to the micro level of it and say, well, that change maybe might not be a good thing or whatever. I mean, I don't know. But if you take the macro approach and kind of say, well, let's look at it from an expansive sort of thing. I guess that's kind of the only way I know how to look at it. I can't really get down. I'm not good at the details, to be honest with you. I wish I was. You're real good at the details. I mean, I've learned that from you just in listening to your show. So I'm more of a macro person. You're more of a micro, at least from my perspective. And
Okay. It depends. I think in life I'm more of a macro person, but anyway, go ahead.
well, no, I guess I'm still not convinced. And it's like, I don't want to like make it about me, but I don't know that these changes help anybody because, you know,
What? No, I'm trying to pin us down. When you say changes, are you talking about NIL and transfer portal? Are you talking about the playoff? What are you talking about?
well, anything that I guess that what makes it, I guess the player, he's not happy, I guess, playing for like Bo Nix or whoever. Oh, he's not going to play it. Well, I'll just go to Oregon, you know, and I guess it worked. I mean, he's there, but and maybe it makes for, you know, greater. I understand how it might affect the each program independently. You know, Oregon's probably a lot better off for the fact he went there, but I don't know that it really makes it better for the industry, I guess. Having all these players that can transfer to whoever they, you know, if they're not happy playing for, I think even before that was Burrow. I don't know, was he not happy at Ohio State? I never quite understood what happened there, but I mean, I guess that was good though, because then he could transfer from Ohio State to LSU, and you can't say that wasn't a good thing. I mean, there used to be rules, I think, that prevented that sort of thing.
Yeah, he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, and he was going into he had already graduated. He was going into a third season of playing, and he was looking for an opportunity.
Well, no, that's kind of what I mean. So I can't say that, you know, if it used to be, I think at least the way I remember it being, and you would know, so that's kind of why I was pick your brain a little bit, but I think it used to be if you transferred, you had to sit out a year.
Yes.
You could do it. You could go, I don't want to play for Oklahoma. I'll play for, you know, whoever else. But you could do that, but you couldn't play right away. I think Russell Wilson, I remember, I think he transferred from, was it North Carolina State to Wisconsin? Was that? And anyway, I don't think he had to sit out. I think he'd already graduated though. I think he was like
graduate transfers did not have to sit out. Well, what's basically happened here, Chris, if we can cut to the chase and then you can go to the next point, is that, yes, the rule concerning transfers having to sit out for 1 year has been abolished. So that rule no longer exists, therefore the proliferation of transfers. And even prior to that, the player would be able to have the opportunity to put in a waiver or could argue their case that there was some type of a family situation, or there was a reason for them to be that they were leaving in a difficult situation at the previous university, and they could file a claim of sorts to have that waived that 1 year. And those became more and more approved for flimsier and flimsier reasons, to where that became a bit of a joke anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just did away with the rule. And to your point, graduate transfers could always immediately transfer and be eligible.
I guess he must have had more eligibility. That was one thing I thought he hadn't used up all his eligibility, Russell Wilson, when he transferred. Was it from to Wisconsin?
He did not have to sit out. I don't remember exactly what his situation was. I'm guessing that he had graduated.
That's kind of what
he had played 3 years at NC State.
So he must have had 1 more year left of eligibility.
And he probably enrolled, well, he definitely had 1 year of eligibility, but he must have enrolled early and got started early on his credits and graduated.
The other thing I was going to mention, because I looked into it, I was just curious, you know. Well, the point, I guess, that One Scoop John, and I don't want to speak for him directly. I can't really do it anyway, but that all this should lend itself to more parity, that I guess maybe more teams, you know, reap the rewards, I guess, of all these administrative changes that I guess, you know, maybe they already are. But I just looked at that. I wanted to see kind of, you know, I don't know if this is a direct comparison or not, but if you look at the FCS and you look at, I guess, the teams, I guess, that tend to rise to the top, It's, I don't know, it might change over time. I mean, I don't expect it to stay this way, but in fact, I think there was a team already that was kind of Incarnate Word, I think, did real well, and they almost beat North Dakota State. So we might be talking right now about Incarnate Word in the title game, but except for the fact North Dakota State hung on and beat them. But what we're looking at over relatively, I guess, over 12 years, 13, whatever, we're still kind of looking at the same teams in the championship. And I don't know that that's always a bad thing, but I mean, we have enough, I guess, to compare. You can see that it really hasn't necessarily made the FCS the same teams are at the top. I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but you don't really see a lot of teams except for Incarnate Word, at least that I can think of, that are making it, in fact, what they said was, I don't know how they make the seedings, but they said in the over 12 years or something like that, except for like 1 or 2 seasons, the same teams are in the championship game. So I don't know if that's going to happen at the FBS level, but let's just pretend that it does.
Yeah.
We're hoping that this playoff will make it to where maybe I don't know which team to throw in there, but maybe a team like, maybe you can tell me, Ohio State, that maybe didn't quite, maybe now that they're in this playoff, that maybe they will anyway. We still can't see. We'll find out. But I don't know if that necessarily, but probably what's going to happen, at least what I think will happen. And it's not to disrespect Ohio State. I mean, they
not to cut you off, Chris, but Ohio State's probably the least impacted team by the expanded playoff than any school in the country.
What do you mean?
That they would have made every 12-team playoff going back to 2004.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they were, in every, maybe even advanced as far as the semifinals every year. I don't know. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just mean, if we're throwing these playoffs out there to say, well, now that'll give maybe a team that ordinarily might not be able to get there a better, I don't know that's really going to happen. I mean, it could.
Oh, you mean to make it all the way to win a championship?
Well, I'm just, I'm not even saying that that's a bad thing, Mark. I'm just saying if the idea is that now we'll see whether, I don't know what team, like I said, what team do you think maybe could do it? I don't know, maybe Kansas State or somebody. I don't know, but I'm not saying that they can't, but it's like, I think we're missing something here. I think if we're doing it with the idea to make it possible for like, I think you're the one that said, with a playoff, we get a greater percentage of the champions in there. I mean, that's true, but it doesn't necessarily change the fact that it's going to be just as hard to get there. So that's my whole point, I think, is we can go on and on about how the playoffs are maybe a better way. And this isn't the NFL, though, where it's going to be like, okay, every divisional champion now has a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Well, maybe in the NFL that would work, but I think we're too far. I think we're comparing an apple to an orange, or maybe a pear or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's really that close of a comparison between how the NFL. I mean, maybe that's what all these changes are supposed to do, is to try to. I mean, it kind of makes it sound like it. That to me, get it to where it's like the NFL. Now almost every team, if that's the idea, maybe that's a good thing. Now almost any team can, if they're properly motivated and all that, they can maybe challenge for a title. But I don't know that that's going to happen, though. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's really very likely.
Well, there are so many differences between college and the NFL and the way they're structured. First and foremost is the NFL is a single corporation. Therefore, their objective is to be prosperous, to make money, and for their entire league and all the components within that league, meaning the 32 franchises, to all be healthy. That's why Pete Rozelle, as you well know, decades and decades ago, came up with the thought that we don't want certain teams just to be dominating the league. We want to build parity. We want parity to be the narrative or the buzzword of our league, because we want everyone to feel, and all fan bases to feel, that their team has a chance. Therefore, they built the NFL draft, which, when you think about it, the NFL draft is not fair. Why should a team receive the first pick in the draft just because they're horrible? They didn't earn that. They're receiving it based on being horrible at what they do.
I don't agree with that either. I don't agree with that either.
You don't agree with my statement, or you don't agree with
Well, no, I think it should. No, I'm not saying I don't agree with you. I don't agree that the worst team should get the first pick because
Exactly.
that's decentivize. It's like de-incentivizing winning. I'm not saying the best way necessarily would be to have the best team have the first pick, but having the worst team get the first pick doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
The fair way to approach it would be to do a randomizer for the first round. And then for subsequent rounds, you adjust it based on where they selected in the first round. Meaning, if you had the first pick in the first round, you get the last pick in the second round. And to make it fair,
Sure.
The NFL is not fair. They also weight the schedules. If you finish with the best record and had the best team and won the Super Bowl, you get as tough a schedule as they can possibly give you based on their parameters. Obviously, you have to play teams in your division and so forth. But the bad teams get easier schedules and the good teams, that's not fair either.
Well, I don't know. In all honesty, I think at the professional level, is there really such thing as an easy schedule? I mean, I don't know.
No, not an easy schedule, but as easy as possible. So anyway, the thrust of the NFL is to create parity. They don't want there to be a great disparity between the best and the worst. They want to kind of compact everything and give everyone a shot. To bring this back to college football, I think it's more about, well, let's be honest, it's more about money than anything of why they're expanding the playoffs. But beyond that, it's about being inclusive of everyone in all the conferences and giving every conference champion an entry into the playoff.
And I've already beat this drum a million times, and I'm sure you probably don't want me to beat it again. I don't really blame you. And people don't agree with me, which I'm kind of frustrated by a little bit. I don't think there's a clearer example in this season where a simple pairing, call me what? Call me old-fashioned, call me antiquated, call me whatever you want to call me. I don't think there's any basis for we could have a Michigan, Georgia, and I don't see any argument. I don't think you can make one that would tell me that that's not the right way to go. I think that would work. I don't know how that's unfair to anybody. It's not unfair I don't think it's unfair to Kansas State, because they beat Texas Christian. That actually is probably, maybe it's the incentive, maybe that keep Texas Christian from going on, I guess, but, or advancing. But I don't think that's unfair to anybody that I can, maybe it's just coincidence one year. You can say that, but.
Okay, I get your point, Chris. So let me counter it this way. For this particular season, since we have two undefeated teams, I totally get your logic. We have two undefeated teams. Why do we have to play these other games? These other teams have lost games. Therefore, we have a perfect fit to a championship game. Georgia, Michigan, they're the only two undefeated. However, what would we have done last year? Who should have played in last year?
Well, you make a good point there, but you know how I feel about it. And I'll just throw it out there. Maybe you don't like it. You probably won't like it. I think you take that champion. I really think what the playoff does is it adds an extra game at the end of the year that we don't need. That's how I look at it. Whether you can call me wrong, I think in that case, I think it's Alabama's title. They beat Cincinnati to you say, what do you want to about Cincinnati? Well, that's not a good team to play in a title game or whatever. They beat them, I think, good enough to where it's, you give it to, not really give it. I think at that point it's Alabama's title. And I don't know why Alabama has to play Georgia a second time.
Oh, okay. So you would have played semifinal games and then just said, we're done.
Well, I don't know that, you can call them semifinal games, Mark. I don't know. Cincinnati, I think they had as much right to be in a title game as Alabama did. So I think you just give the winner the title is how I look at it. Now you can say, well, that's not fair to Michigan. That's not fair.
Why does Alabama get to? I understand why Cincinnati gets to play in the championship game because they're undefeated, I guess. Why does Alabama get to play in the championship game?
And not Georgia? Is that what you're telling me?
Not Michigan.
Well, again, I understand your points, and it's like, well, I guess it's a judgment call. But why not Alabama? I guess I
don't want to make judgment calls.
Well, I don't either. But why Alabama and why not Michigan? Okay, that's a valid point. I don't know that there's a good answer to that, except that, I guess maybe other than the fact that Alabama probably, maybe was better than, that's speculative, but, ultimately I think it kind of proved itself out that Alabama was a better team than Michigan last year. But but we don't. I guess you don't necessarily know that until after the semifinals. I understand what you're saying, but I think in terms of who would win the title, I think it would have been, in my opinion, in my estimation, which, you know, you can make whatever you want in my estimation. I think if it's limited to 2 teams, I think it's Alabama, you know, just from my opinion. It's all it is an opinion. I think it's Alabama's title after all, you know, after the dust settles, I guess.
So Chris, here's the issue, is that I believe that everybody in this chat, even though we would all argue about whether it should be 4 teams, 8 teams, 12 teams, 16 teams, and whether there should be buys or no buys, or the bowls used or on campus, we could all argue about all those things. I'm going to guarantee you, Chris, that 98% of the people that are listening and watching, and beyond this, all the other college football fans that don't even know we exist here, want a system in which the best teams are playing. That's why we have college football. That's why we have sports. We want to see teams play on the field.
I don't disagree with you, Mark, but I'm just trying to give an example in the FCS. Is that not a fair example? What I read, you know, maybe I'm reading it because I don't always understand exactly what it told me. Like I just told you, Incarnate Word really was the only upset. They beat another team that was ranked higher than them. In fact, the team they beat was supposed to be the better team. So except for that one team that Incarnate Word beat, what we're getting is basically the same result as if we didn't have a playoff, except for that Incarnate Word upset. That upset changed the title game. It did. But you know who it allowed to go in, though, in place? It actually advanced North Dakota State again. So I guess, yeah, if you want to see North Dakota State in every title game, and that's not due to Incarnate Word. I mean, Incarnate Word lost, but, you know, it could have been an Incarnate Word if they'd have beaten them. I'm trying to be as fair as I can.
So if I'm getting this straight, Chris, in the FCS, which I don't pay any attention to, hang on. The top teams, the top seeds, always make the championship.
Not always. No,
always.
No, it's not always. No, it's not always. But they said like 11. What it was they wait until like there's 8 teams. I think what they do is they wait until there's like 8. Actually, I think they do rank them before that. But then I think they seed them at 8 is what they do, is the impression I had. So they seed them at 8. Incarnate Word was 7th, and they beat the number 2 seed. And I can't remember who the number 2 seed was, but I should know it, but it's not, for some reason I can't think of it. And but other than that, and they said over the last 13 seasons, 11 of the last 13, it's almost always been the top seeded teams that advance. It's just that's just how it is. It's they all.
So basically, you're saying this is a waste of time. We shouldn't be playing.
No, I'm not saying it's a waste of time. I'm just saying be careful what you wish for. Let's have this playoff and let's make sure we see the teams correctly. And my point is, if it's anything like the FCS, we could have a 50 million team bracket. And if they advance the way they're supposed to, and with home field, and what they said was, I guess what they do is with the seedings, because they don't want to be unfair in how the seedings are. I think the seedings are the top seed gets the seed, or I'm sorry, the home. So I think Incarnate Word, one of the reasons they lost was they didn't have the home field advantage. I'm not saying that determined the outcome, but they were a 7 seed, and I think North Dakota State was a 3 seed. So they lost at North Dakota State by 2 points or something real small. And they said it was kind of a controversial game anyway, that Incarnate Word could have won, but they didn't. But regardless of that, what we're getting now is a title game between the number 1 seed, South Dakota State, against the number 3 seed.
Got it.
Which, well, it's just what it is.
All right. Bottom line, Chris, people want to see the teams on the field competing against each other.
Well, no, but
we watch this. So
my point is, we're going to get, if it's anything like the FCS, it's not going to. We're still going to get it,
all right.
just like the BCS. Nope, just like the BCS. Well, just like the BCS, we're going to get the number 1 versus number 2, no matter.
Okay. You can call me back in 5 years and say, see, Mark, the 1 versus 2 seeds played every year in the championship game, and you know what my response is going to be? Okay. I didn't say that they wouldn't.
Well,
I don't know.
I didn't say it would be every year. I just said that if it's anything like the FCS,
if it's not every year, then we need to play a playoff. Well,
I guess my point is we can have all these teams in there, but if they're seated correctly, it's not going to really change much unless like I said, Incarnate Word, number 7. They almost did. They almost advanced and maybe could have won. Who knows? Well, I guess the interesting thing to see will be whether North Dakota State can beat South Dakota State.
If the College Football Playoff Selection Committee was seeding teams correctly, meaning they could predict the results of the games correctly, then
Sure.
wouldn't the 1 versus 2 be playing in every national championship game?
Well,
That's
Mark,
not happening, right?
that's really not my point. My point is the playoff, if they see, they're going to have to see them in some fashion, I would think.
Yes.
Unless which it could happen. I think last year it was Montana State was a number 8 seed. So, I mean, they advanced to the championship game. So, I mean, yeah.
There you go.
Well, they did.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
They didn't win.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Appreciate you being here. Sometimes we get to a point in these conversations where I don't even know what we're talking about. I think this is the bottom line with Chris. He wants to rank the teams at the end of the season and say they're the champion. And the rest of us, I believe, whether some of you just won a championship game, okay. Some of you want 4 teams, some want 6, 8, whatever the number. I haven't come across anybody else that doesn't want teams on a field to be playing football, hitting each other to determine who the best is, who the champion is, right? That's why we watch sports, right? Okay. The real MVP is coming up here next. Hey, the real.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am doing just fine. What's up?
Well, I think I'm actually going to defend Chris a bit on what he was saying.
Yeah.
I think his point was that imagine if Alabama won the Natty this year.
Yes.
How disheartening would that be for the rest of college football?
You mean if Alabama made it as a 5 seed in a 12 team and they won the national championship?
That is correct.
Okay. Disheartening. Yeah.
To the average fan. If you're a fan of Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, being like, Alabama's probably had the worst year they've had since 2009, and they still won the national championship.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Chris was pointing out with North Dakota State. North Dakota State's had a down year this year, but yet they still can win the national championship, if I was following his point correctly.
Right.
So I think he's saying, hey, if you expand the playoffs, you might actually be expanding the gap between the teams and not decreasing the gap.
I got you. Because right now we have the potential for an Alabama to have an off, not really just an off year, have an off week. And that's going to eliminate them from the playoffs. If Alabama doesn't have what you would consider an off week against Tennessee or LSU, they're in the playoff right now. And even if it's not a vintage Alabama team, they can still then get into the playoff, win a championship.
That is correct.
We're making up for off Alabama years to get them back into the playoff and win. I get it. Yeah, we're running that risk. To your point about the SEC, we will see how it plays out. The SEC may prove to be even more dominant in a 12-team playoff when there are an average of probably 4 SEC teams in the field. And if they're not, and if the committee's truly doing its job and just honestly and accurately ranking the teams and not saying, okay, well, we don't want to make this in such a way that we create that matchup or this matchup or whatever, we could have an SEC semifinal some year where we have all 4 teams from the SEC.
Right, but it's not going to be the 1 seed versus the 2 seed like you were mentioning with Chris, because it goes by conference championship.
Sure. Yeah, it's going
so it will not be the seeding that you got to look at.
Yeah, 1, 4, 6, and 9 or whatever.
Right. Well, not even that likely. I doubt all the SEC with that point. I'm pretty sure what Chris is saying is the only dynasty in this football that has lasted longer than Alabama has been North Dakota State.
Yeah.
And that has occurred in part because of the expanded playoff. So for anybody who wants the expanded playoff because, poor SEC and SEC going down and Alabama's dynasty is over, well, you might be extending it by another 5 to 10 years because on average, they're probably better than most teams. Like if Alabama had to play a best of 7 against every single team in the country, Alabama would probably win. Would you disagree with that?
Alabama against the rest of the country?
No, if you put Alabama versus Georgia in a
Yeah.
best of 7,
Yeah.
Bama would probably win. Alabama versus Michigan in a best of 7, Alabama would probably win.
Alabama, Georgia?
Well, I think it'd be closest, but I think Alabama's still more talented.
I like this Georgia team over Alabama, the way they're playing, the way they've played this season. Yeah.
But you get the point I'm trying to support.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I was going to say with Chris. And Mark, it was a sad day for the SEC yesterday, Mark. The SEC went 0-4 against the Pac-12. Now, I know what you're thinking. They only played 1 football game, but they also played 3 basketball games. It was pointed out to me that the SEC lost every single one of them, Mark. So I guess the reign of the SEC is just over, right, Mark?
Well, I don't care about the 3 basketball games, but okay. This football matchup between Oregon State and Florida is funny. So maybe we've got our Oregon State contingent. We've got Connor Johnson and we've got our guy Clint that joined us from the Oregon State side. And then we've got a number of SEC fans, of course. So I made a comment to you that prior to this game, that if Oregon State wins by 1 point, they should be given due credit for their win. That's all they could do was win the game. They can't help how many players opted out for Florida, etc. They won the game. But they won the game convincingly. Well, how much does that really count? Well, I am going to give Oregon State a ton of credit. They not only eked out a win, they won convincingly. They won in blowout fashion. They were the much better team. If Florida had its full complement of players, I still believe Oregon State would have won. There's no way of us knowing that, but I think it's reasonable to think that. There was a comment made, I don't know by who, from our Pac-12 contingent last night that this erases Florida's win over Utah. Okay, I don't really understand that. It doesn't. Unless you want to erase this bowl victory for Oregon State, you can erase both of them. If you just say, okay, it's a wash, that's fine. I get it. But this doesn't erase Florida as a fully stocked Florida team winning that game against Utah. And certainly we have to also go back to, we just took a 9-3 team from the Pac-12 that is the 5th best team in the conference, taking on the 10th or 11th best team in the SEC. So it's not a reasonable matchup. Oregon State should have been playing who? Ole Miss, maybe?
Yeah, them, Mississippi State, somebody like that.
Yeah.
But Mark, you know what I'm glad? I'm glad at least it wasn't a shutout. Can you imagine if it was a shutout? You want to talk about that field goal for a bit? Maybe is that the most moral victory field goal in all of college football history?
Okay, so you're not a field goal guy by Billy Napier.
I'm not a fan of going for a field goal when you're down 30 with 40 seconds to go. I don't understand what analytics are being used there.
Well, what's the difference in going for a touchdown? You score a touchdown, big deal. It's 30-7.
You understand it, but I mean, I just don't like going for a field goal. I feel like maybe it's an unwritten rule type thing.
Yeah, I hear that from people, and I might be in the minority here, but I don't get that you suddenly have to throw all logic aside and be a man about it and have to go for a touchdown because you're getting killed. I
mean, I get it as well, but it just kind of reeked of like desperation in a way.
Well, there's nothing to, okay. Are you talking about simply because there was this scoring streak alive, or in any situation?
Bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have an issue with them kicking a field goal, because I just think if you score a touchdown, what does that prove? You scored a meaningless touchdown. So you kicked a meaningless field goal. You can do either one.
Well, I guess, but Mark, you know what hasn't been discussed tonight, and I've been paying attention for the most part, so I may have missed it, but it's been the bowl games.
Yes.
You know, that's I thought that was the whole point why we played college football was for these bowl games.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of a sign of how insignificant these bowl games have become. That there could be a college football show and bowl games with bowl game results happening today.
Yes.
And we're talking about transfer portal, recruits from 2024 decommitting. Like, I knew the bowl games were going away, but is it that far gone, Mark, to where 2024 commits are being higher priority than the bowl games themselves?
Yeah, that's where we are. Not for me personally, because I recorded this Marshall UConn game and I know what the final score was. And I'm not going to say that I'm going to throw it in and I'm going to chart every play or pay that much attention to it. But I love bowl season and I love the bowl games. And to me, it is so much more interesting than tracking the transfer portal and recruiting. What interests me, this is long been what I have observed of myself versus the population, is that what interests me doesn't interest the masses typically. So I much rather watch a football game and talk about football than the transfer portal and recruiting. However, if I cut a video on said football game versus talked about the transfer portal, I know what the video views are going to be between the two.
I understand that, but that's just, I mean, it's just kind of a sad state of affairs to me. I mean, poor UConn went what? 0-11, 0-12, 1-11 last year. Now they're in a bowl game. Nobody's even giving them proper praise for just making a bowl game, Mark. And I think one of the reasons the bowl games has been devalued is because of one question that it likes to be thrown around by ESPN, and Josh Pate made this point before. But it's very simple. Who's in, Mark? When you ask that question of who's in, there's an obvious implication. That's who's out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're out of the group, then you are disappointing. Especially felt like you belong in the group. I think it's just as simple as that. Is the marketing push toward the playoff?
Absolutely. We're conditioned to believe and act as we are told. So our buddy Tony Altimore has pointed out that when ESPN puts a game on, even if it's been shown that the teams that are playing on ESPN2 are better and it's a better game, more people are just going to tune to the ESPN game and stay with it.
That's interesting. Now, I did not know that, and that's fascinating to me.
Because we have it stuck in our head. Okay, this is the ABC primetime game. Okay, we're going to watch that because it must be important. They're telling me it's important.
I wonder what that's going to be from the SEC when they switch champions. I wonder how that's going to impact.
Again, I'm not saying I'm completely oblivious to and I'm not impacted by promotion and advertising. I'm not saying that, but I got to think I'm less inclined because shoot, I'm looking at the Big Ten Network and FS1 and I'm surveying the games every week and just make my choices of what I want to see. I don't think that really factors in for me, but I'm not going to say that I'm not impacted by all of that. Yes. Anything else, man?
I gave the Pac-12 props for winning against Florida, so I probably should, even it out. Mark, when was the last time the Pac-12 has been in a group of 5 team? And please stop losing a group of 5 team.
Yes, they've got a bowl streak going up against the group of 5, and they didn't even hang in the game.
I mean, come on. I mean, this is if the Pac-12 wants respect from people like me, then win the group of 5 games as well. You can't beat Florida and then lose to Fresno State.
Yeah, by 23 points.
Yeah, in my opinion, that's kind of an even out result.
Yeah, this is not a banner day for the Pac-12. It shouldn't be. actually, it would be an insult to say it should be a banner day for the Pac-12. Then just by splitting 2 games and losing to a group of 5 team.
Yeah, but it kind of is, because before this year, what it's been, a 2-3 year losing streak.
Yes. And also a top 15 team in the Pac-12 beating a 6-6 Florida team that's 11th best in the SEC. So yeah, let's back off on too much Pac-12 love here. They haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, they beat. I think you're exactly right, Mark.
Arizona Tucson 93 guy, 30-3. Yes, that's great. They took care of business, no question.
What was the score of the Fresno State game?
29-6.
Oh, 29-6. That's pretty similar to 30-3, Mark.
Yes.
I mean, we're splitting hairs.
I know, it's funny.
It goes back to what I was saying previously, how we look at the top, but we don't look at the bottom of the conferences. I mean, this is a perfect example that we will talk about the great win the Pac-12 has, but we will not talk about the loss that they had at all.
Yeah.
But shout out to Oregon State. They had a great, on all seriousness, they're a great team, and maybe one of the best years in their history.
Yes.
For them. So congrats, Mark, and congrats, Connor Johnson, Cliff Moses, all the rest of the Oregon State fans, and fight on to Tim, Tony, and Rick.
Thanks to Real. Before we take this call from Uncle Lou, I will point out as well that I think it's funny that while the Pac-12 is supposed to be having this Renaissance year, and I'm right there with you. So Pac-12 people, you know that I've ranked your conference well. Number 3 right now. I don't truly believe it's number 3, but based on the results, number 3. But all that said, and how awful the Big Ten is, and I've been right there too. I even posted a video that says the Big Ten sucks because of some of these results. The Big Ten still has a better record than the Pac-12 and still has a better record against Power 5 opponents than the Pac-12. All right. Let's hear from Uncle Lou. What's going on?
Mark Rogers, I've been doing some research, and you're going to be as shocked at these results as I am. Now, like you, after listening to what's his name, the playoff man.
Yes.
These results are shocking to me. Now he wants to talk about what's gonna happen if we expand the playoffs, and I said, well, let's just look at what actually has happened. Mm-hmm. Now, like you, I was expecting to look back and see a bunch of 1 versus 2 matchups in the national title game, because clearly the higher ranked teams are just going to win. Well, would you believe me, Mark, if I told you that you had to go all the way back to 2018 to find a 1 versus 2 matchup in the national title game? And guess who won, Mark?
The 2.
The 2. Before that, you got to go back to 2016 to find a 1 versus 2 matchup in the national title game. Guess who won?
That would be the 2.
Yes. Yeah. The year before that, we had 1 versus 2. Guess who won?
Yes, when Bama was the 2. Yes.
The 2. 3 out of 8 years, we've ended up with 1 versus 2. Never has 1 beaten 2.
You're delivering the facts.
The 1 seed has only won the national title twice in the playoff era.
I know it.
2 out of 8 times. So the first playoff we had was won by the 4 seed. So I don't understand these huge college football fans that are arguing for less football. Have a great day.
I don't know. Uncle Lou, thanks for showing up. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Our guy Michael Hogue has shown up. He's gearing up for the big Citrus Bowl game against LSU.
Hey, Mark, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just fine, Michael. I'm a bit put off that Purdue's going to show up without 4 of its best players.
Yeah, but we got one coming back, and he's going to suit up for the game. He got it. Yeah, he got a special waiver for Mark as a going away president.
Aiden O'Connell.
No.
Shane Durham, Charlie Jones.
No. Drew Brees is playing in the game.
Oh, he's going to play. You know, if they want to boost.
He's Go ahead. Sorry, Mark.
And when we talk about bowl games being meaningless and nobody wants to watch them and all of that, which is obviously not true, we should go with a stunt like letting Drew Brees play a bowl game and shoot that TV rating.
Yeah,
that would be fascinating.
He's gonna be the first player coach in the history of all the bowl games to play and coach. No, I'm just kidding.
That would
But no,
be
I just want on a
I
serious.
would love that.
That would be fun. But on a serious note, I want to get your take about Ryan Walters being selected as the new Purdue coach. See what your take about it is.
I got to tell you, I don't have much of a take on it right now. I don't know much about him and his background. I do know he is coached, but I got to tell you, Michael, it's that one passed me by. What day did he get hired? Whatever I was working on, I was flooded with all these other situations going on. I haven't looked into Mr. Ryan Walters yet.
Yeah, was officially announced last Tuesday, and his press conference was last Wednesday. And I got to talk to him, spend some time with him Saturday. Hard to believe he's only 36 years old. He does not look like he's 36, Mark.
What's he look like? He's 13?
No, he looks like he's probably in mid-20s,
Okay.
like stuff like that. But no, ironically, he actually was a quarterback in high school. And I want to ask you, how many players have you seen that played one side of the ball actually end up coaching it on the opposite side? If it happens, I don't think it happens too often, does it?
Sure, it does.
So you're saying there's been former quarterbacks or receivers who's actually
necessarily quarterbacks, but other position players, yes.
So you're saying there's been people on offense who actually ended up being defensive coordinators and vice versa.
Michigan just this past the off season prior to 2021 mixed up all sorts of guys that had defensive backgrounds, put them on offense, offensive guys, put them on defense.
Okay, I see. I didn't know that and stuff like that.
But quarterback, I can't say that we've had too many quarterbacks that then became defensive-minded guys and on that side of the ball. So that's a good point that you make right there. And yes, Ryan Walters. What I find curious about this is I had not heard of any other candidates for this job that Purdue was considering.
Well, Shane Beamer talked about it. Tom Monken has talked about it, but I think Beamer just did try to get more money on his contract and stuff like that. Monken, I don't think he was serious about it. But I think Ryan Walters was just like the night Bembinski called him to offer him the job. He says, "What the hell took you so long? I already got the contract signed." So he already had it all done and stuff like that. But no, I like his motivation, stuff like that. And the first thing he did, which everybody knew was going to happen, was give Maccabee a scholarship and stuff like that. But everybody already knew he just did it early and stuff, so which is well deserved for Devin.
Well, he coached under Barry Odom when Barry Odom was at Mizzou. And then obviously he stayed there. So he impressed Eli Drinkwitz enough that he even stayed there once there was that coaching transition. And then the Illinois defense obviously is so much better, not just this year, but even though they only won 5 games last year, they were significantly better than they were prior to that under a coach that's supposed to be known for defense, and that's Lovie Smith. So, he did a bang-up job at Mizzou and at Illinois.
Now I want to get your take about Graham Harrell being the offensive coordinator for Purdue.
Well, he certainly, if they want to stay with the same style of offense that they're not only known for under Jeff Brom, but certainly their history is having a very quarterback-centric offense. Purdue has produced, folks, look it up if you're not familiar. Purdue has arguably produced the greatest quarterbacks in the history of any school that, since this rebirth of the program under Joe Tiller, that, this falls right in line with what we expect of Purdue football. And that's to be very exciting on offense, to want to use speed in space, to want to use a highly precisioned attack, similar to what Mike Leach did at Mississippi State and other stops. Will Rogers, under control passing, a lot of continuity and chemistry between quarterback and receivers, knowing where they're going to be at all times. And so I'm good with Graham Harrell being the Purdue.
Yeah, just wondering what happened with him in West Virginia this year.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that West Virginia's personnel is that good on offense. I don't think it is.
My last question to you about this before I go, because I know you got a gazillion callers still, is when Texas Tech beat Texas, I think it was 2000 when they was number one, when Crabtree scored with like 2 seconds left.
Yeah.
Was Graham Harrell the quarterback then, or was it Cliff Kingsbury?
That would have been Graham Harrell. I will double check on that, but
I thought so, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that was 2008, so that would have been Harrell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering stuff like that. So, as far as your shows for the rest of the week, what are we looking forward to?
Well, in addition to all our typical team channels and all those live streams, Wednesday is going to be our big day because it's National Signing Day. So what we plan on doing, Michael, on Wednesday is I've got an Oklahoma show from 12:30 to 1:30. That's on the Oklahoma channel. But then we're going to go live here from 2 to 5 in the afternoon and do all National Signing Day stuff and have contributors coming on giving us National Signing Day reports. And then I've got to go knock out the Michigan, Florida State, and Miami shows that are going to be full throttle National Signing Day, 5, 6, and 7 Eastern. Then I'm going to come back here at 8:30 Eastern, and we're going to go for who knows how long on National Signing Day.
25,000 hours all the way to Christmas Day.
In that range.
Now I just wondered stuff like no, but another thing I want to do, and I forgot about it. Do you know the situation with Jaden Daniels?
Well, I know that he's got a bad ankle. I don't know whether he's going to play. I know that obviously they opted to go with Garrett Musmeyer in the second half of the SEC championship game, but as last I heard, Jaden Daniels was not ruled out of the bowl game.
All right, I hope Purdue can beat Brian Kelly till pulp. I don't still see it happening though, because you're going to miss Jones, Sturm, and of course O'Connell. But hey, you never know, man. Austin Bird could have a heck of his last game on January 2nd. But we shall see.
We shall see. The SEC and the Big Ten get together. I always enjoy those bowl games, but I would love to see both teams at full strength.
Full strength, me too.
Yep.
All right, sir.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for your time. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Michael. All right, and I guess we're going to wrap it up with another Michael on the line. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, sir.
Oh, hello, Mark. I just wanted to say that I enjoy your show. First time, long time.
Cool. Thank you.
Appreciate you. I'm actually, no problem. Happy about today. My Huskies made it to a bowl game after being in the cellar for a while. So it's pretty good. Feeling the bowl season again. I just want to say that the problem with punishing players for skipping bowl games would be future recruits. Unless it's a NCAA policy, it would be hard to get. It would make it harder to get higher star recruits that might be looking for a future in the pros.
Well, I wouldn't propose that this would be done sporadically. This would be done by everyone, so it would be the same rules everywhere.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Just wanted to say, enjoy your show. It's really brought the passion back into my enjoyment of the game. Half the fun of the game is the discourse. So I do enjoy these shows where everyone gets to talk and have their opinions heard.
Well, thank you, Michael. And had I known that you were a first-time caller, and I will say this to everybody in the chat, if you're going to be a first-time caller, you move to the head of the line. I want to take first-time callers first and foremost. So I apologize. I didn't recognize that you were a first-time caller, or we would have moved you to the front of the line.
Oh, no problem. Like I said, enjoy your show. Enjoy the back and forth. Even especially when it gets passionate, this is a sport about passion, and it's just a fun time.
I am right there with you, Michael. Well, thank you for taking part, and certainly call us back anytime.
Will do.
Thanks, Michael. All right, super chat coming in. Appreciate that. Of course, I haven't worn my contacts in forever. I'm getting lazy with these glasses. And you obviously noticed that I hate wearing glasses, or I wouldn't constantly take them off. But we've got Todd here. Todd, we appreciate you. Great content. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that so much. Shoelace Sooners here. Awesome. Appreciate you being here, Shoelace Sooner. Thanks, Mark. Great show as usual. And of course, we will have our Oklahoma National Signing Day report coming up Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern over on the Oklahoma channel. All right. I believe we have done just about all the damage we can possibly do today. If you have yet to see it, we did an hour with Uncle Lou earlier today, 5 Eastern time. Check out that post, and appreciate you being here. We've got USC coming up at 11 or 8 Pacific. That on the USC channel. Tuesday. I'm going to do a TCU Michigan breakdown by the numbers. Probably will also post Ohio State, Georgia by the numbers. And we go live with Iowa and Nebraska on Tuesday at 5:30 and 7 Eastern. And then as we head toward National Signing Day, Wednesday. On Wednesday, we've got Oklahoma Live at 12:30 Eastern. That's on the Oklahoma channel. If there are any big breaking updates, anything that needs any type of response, I will be here, and I will either go live or post segments in the morning. Otherwise, our first content of the day is going to be Oklahoma Live on the Oklahoma channel at 12:30 Eastern. Then we're going live from 2 to 5 on Wednesday, 2 to 5 Eastern, right here with National Signing Day. And then we've got Michigan live at 5, Florida State live at 6, Miami at 7, and then we're coming back here live at 8:30 on National Signing Day to wrap up the day in recruiting and across college football. All right. We will all see you coming up on Tuesday right here at the Voice of College Football. Next live show is Iowa. No, I'm forgetting. I still have work to do tonight. Next live show, USC Live, coming up at 8 Eastern, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific in just a few hours. See you then.